I'll start with the very basic unit of this S scroll, which is almost infinitely adaptable to various spaces. Here I'm going to do two of them in rectangles that are 1 3/4 1.5 by a little over 4.5 inches. And I've marked out those rectangles. I'll start with this large number 7 gouge. It's about 1 inch wide. And I'm just connecting the vertical and horizontal margins of these rectangles like that. Round them off. And I'll do both. After I've cut them, I didn't tell you how I cut them. I'm holding the tool vertically and just striking straight down with the gouge to cut these, usually 2 blows of the gouge. Now I lean back and at about a 45-degree angle or something like it, and just take a chip out there. Here I'm holding the tool with my fingers behind the tool, my thumb on the front of it, and resting on the board, or wrapped in my fingers, heel of my hand on the board, cutting that like that. So now comes that little circle in the corners, and this tool is like a number 8. It's 1/2 inch wide, and this circle, they're in diagonally opposite corners of each rectangle and not too close to that section I just defined there. So strike it like that. Again, this tool's held vertically to do the incision, right like that, and just turn it a few times to get that circle. Just eyeball the placement of them. Like that, like that. Now the next one, the circle is right in line with this one, and then its opposite will be way down here. So they're diagonally opposite within each rectangle, but then when you've got them in pairs like this, they mirror each other. And now comes the V-tool work to define the part that gives it its name, the S. And I often tell students to make a mark at the center of that rectangle. So I have 3/4 of an inch there. 4.5 is 2 1/4 here. About like that is the middle. So there's several things to keep in mind with that center line. These curves, we'll deal with them one at a time. I'm going to come from this margin, curving up outside that center point to my left of it, and then I'm not going up to the other margin. I'm going to connect to that circle, and then the one from this margin comes outside to my right of that center, connects to the circle. So margin to circle, circle to margin. It's easy to get those crossed, and you'll do it if you carve enough of these. I still do it sometimes. That's why it's nice to have that center point. I'm not going to make this cut all in one move. I'm going to stop here. So I just kind of curve up like that, and quit there. Now reverse those curves like that. And notice my V-tool line stops before it connects all the way to that corner. My eye will make that connection. I don't need to carve that all that way. There. So that's those cuts. It just takes some practice to get there. Things you want to keep in mind are the flatter or straighter that line is, it looks dead. It needs a little bend, a little curve to it. And I don't start curving up right away from here. I come almost straight away for a blow or two of the mallet and then curve up. If it comes too quickly from here, you'll end up with a problem in the leaf that forms here afterwards. I'll show you when we get to that, which is now. This tool is another one, another antique, so no numbering system on it. It's similar to our number 8 these days. It's 3/4 of an inch wide. And it's going to define a leaf here. I'll show you one and then tell you about it. Like that. It comes away from that circle. So again, it connects into the V-tool line. If it were to come, say here, it would get real weak in there, the leaf, and liable to chip. So here that grain is longer than if I were to do that. And so these, it's usually, for this size tool, 1.5 strikes. About like that. And then extend it a little bit. So you just sort of leapfrog it in like that. Now I switch to this number 7, and it's 3/4 of an inch wide. And you don't need these exact tools, you need tools similar to them. You have steeper curves or flatter curves or wider or narrower tools. You might need to adapt your spacing somehow. This leaf, I call a diagonal leaf. If it had a center line, it would be a diagonal like that. And it comes right from that cut. So this number 7 gouge is going to curve like this and sort of blend right into that previous cut like that, and then oppose itself like that. And another consideration on these is if you make that leaf too narrow at its base, it can chip off when you cut the background out. Notice how broad mine are. That one's a little narrower than that one, but they're all, on this scale, they're 1/2 inch wide at their base at least. I use the same tool to make what I call half a leaf, coming from that, the outer edge of that leaf, bending back and blending into the V-tool line, right like that. That holdfast keeps coming loose. So that's the whole outline of the pattern. And now I'll cut some background out. To chop out the background I use this number 5 gouge, just 1/2 inch wide, and I use mallet work and handwork to do this. I'll show you both ways. The handwork, I'm holding the tool way down low, grabbing it in my fingers, and then bracing my hand on the board and going like that. Here my fingertips are on the board, the backs of my fingers, thumb on the tool like that, and then I rock it left and right because I'm meeting that curve and to sever that fiber. This tool has a crown to it. It's not ground straight across. And I like that in a tool like this. It allows me, I think, some more versatility. And I can carve with one that's flat across, but I don't enjoy it as much. That background doesn't need to be flat. It's faceted. There's places you just can't get in with the tool. It can't reach. And I don't want you taking 4 different tools and using all this time to go in and get that stuff out. You just want to cut it out enough to get some shadow in there, which doesn't take much. Like that. The mallet work is, this scale's pretty small for mallet work, but it's the same sort of thing, like that. And even when I do mallet work, I still clean up the last couple strokes by hand. My goal in removing this background is to do it in very few strokes. I want to get as much out of there as I can, as quickly as I can, without spending a lot of time fussing about it. Now I'll take out those circles. I see one of them popped out when I cut it, and I didn't even notice that. These I do usually pop a bit with a mallet, like that. You can flick them a bit. But you want to leave wood in there. You don't want to go so deep that you've lost control. Now I can do the cleanup. I'm just using the corner of the gouge and then swinging around like that and like that. And this one split out, so I don't have any say in that matter. It's a little too deep now. It won't be fatal. These carvings will be so busy anyway. Now, that's the background out, so it's just a matter of cutting some detail on the foreground. And I go back to the tools I used to define the shapes. So here's that first sort of number 8, and I'm just cutting a chip behind there, much like what I did on that corner. I've got a little fiber stuck there, so I repeat my first stroke, and then the second stroke will clean that up. Same thing there. And like that. And these little accents are really just to put some more shadow in there. That's the whole gist of this game. So I've switched to that number 7, and then with it I make some accents on those leaves. They sort of radiate or fan out from that margin. Like that. Like that. and you can take a chip out behind them. This scale is so small, I wouldn't really do it narrower than 1.5 inches. You don't have enough room. There's one variation on it that omits this leaf. You'll see that in the drawing. So it's just that rounded leaf and the center one. So you might go to that if you have a narrow space like what I've got here. And then just a V-tool line in that leaf, curving a bit. Has a little hook at the end in the leaf. So it comes from here, sort of extends that curve there, and then a little hook on its end. Like that. And one last thing I do is this punch, which in this case is just a big nail set. And I use it at the junctures of all those sort of diamond, half diamond shapes. Sort of as punctuation, like that. So that's the basic unit of the S scroll, and there's lots and lots of variations of it. We'll get to see some of them. Here's another set I just carved. So we'll do them in pairs, we'll do them standing up and crisscrossed.